That's uncomfortable, isn't it? That waiting. That, hey, what's going on here? Have you ever had to wait for something? I had to wait for a long time to meet Tammy. It was a long wait, but I'm glad I waited. Shalise loves to wait for things, or doesn't like to wait for things, I should say, because Shalise is like, she's been counting down Christmas since
12 days till Brandon comes home. Woo!
and 12 days till Brett comes home, and so she's already counting all these days. Some of you start counting down on Christmas in October. Waiting. One of the things that I don't like about Costco is the cell phone service. You ever notice that?
No.
Maybe it's just my phone. And honestly, our house gets horrible service. You would think that by the interstate we would get great service. But there are times, not so much in the new one, but in the Costco in Vancouver, I would go in and I'd be like trying to get a hold of Tammy. Hey, do we need this? Or do we want this? And I would wait for an answer. And I would wait for an answer. And I would wait for an answer. And between Costco and our house, sometimes I never would get an answer. Just because of the frustration and the pain and the agony of trying to wait. And just that, come on, wait. And it's hard to wait. And it's hard to experience that silence in the waiting. For a while there, so what was it, 2022, I think, we filed our taxes, Tammy and I, no, it's 21. We filed our taxes on time for 2021. And we knew that we were supposed to get a good refund back. And we waited for it. 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 And we finally got it in August of 2024. It was like several $1,000s. But the timing was perfect because we were going on vacation and that extra money helped and stuff like that. But it was a long waiting and we kept looking. I would go online and that waiting and that silence from the IRS. I wasn't getting mail or anything. That silence was just so frustrating. Right? Been there? That waiting and that silence. We didn't have a gospel reading this morning for two reasons. One, we did the Advent candle. But two, there was this 400-year stretch where it seemed like God was silent. This 400-year stretch where it seems like God is not talking. No more prophets. Nobody. The people continued to worship. They were faithful in that. They would do that. But there was this 400-year period of waiting and waiting and waiting. Tegan, did we start the video? Good. I threw you off with the other gospel readings. That's why I was checking. So 400-year period. No, not yet. No, not yet. Go back.
Shoot.
Sorry, I meant to start the camera. That was my fault. Yeah, wait. You heard start the video. So, imagine for a moment that your phone goes dead. Not just for a day, but for 400 years. Could you survive with your phone going dead for 400 years?
Would I still be alive?
What is this? She did?
No, she couldn't.
She couldn't. I don't think most of us could, so she's not alone in that. No text, no calls, nothing. And so the way you communicate with people is gone. And the way the Israelite nation communicated with God is gone for 400 years. They continued to read through the Torah. They continued to listen to the scriptures. But it felt like God was silent. I've never felt that for 400 years. But I have felt it for what felt like 400 days, or weeks, or different periods of days and months and weeks throughout my life where I just felt like God was silent. That's what happens between the Old and the New Testament. God, who had regularly communicated with his people through prophets, went silent. So now you might be thinking, that sounds horrible. Yeah, it does. And we're going to look at why God might do this. But now we get to watch the video.
Sometimes waiting on God is like trying to find cell reception in the middle of nowhere. No bars. That's infuriating. I mean, look at this place. You'd think they'd have better reception out here. Hello? Is that snow? Oh, goody. Or maybe that word from God is like waiting on a text reply. The worst, it's those 3 little dots. All I needed was a quick response, but they just keep going and going and going. What are you doing? Are you recapping the Count of Monte Cristo? I just need an answer. Is it cell phone coverage? Is it me personally? Is it you? Is it me? I don't know. Or maybe waiting on God is like trying to get reception in an underground tunnel. Over 2,000 years ago, God's people were also waiting. They were literally for hundreds of years waiting for God to give them a message and answer. Previously, God found ways to communicate, whether it be a burning bush, a pillar of fire, prophets and kings, and now nothing. It was like they knew he was there, but there was like a lost connection, you know? Have you ever felt like that? Deafening silence in your hour of need. And even in that silence, with only 3 little dots to hold on to and 1 bar of hope, we are reminded why we celebrate Christmas. For unto us a child is born, our Messiah. And do you know what that means for us? And he will never leave you.
So it's important for us to understand, and it's essential for us to understand, that God is involved, and he's setting the stage, and he's not absent during this period. He just seems like it. God's not absent. He's there, and he's helping the Israelite people, and he's working behind the scenes to do some amazing things. And so he is setting the stage for what is to come. The greatest plot twist in all of history, the arrival of Jesus. So, let's look at this period, and here's some things we can learn from waiting and learn from silence. First, the preparation of silence. The silent times of life cause us to wonder and to think and to say, God, are you there? And are you really involved in life? But it was the words of Jesus who said, my Father is always at his work to this very day, and I too am working. Just because you cannot see or hear God working doesn't mean that he is not. Think about that. Sometimes God's silence is actually preparation. It's his preparing. So think about what happens in the 400 years between the Old and the New Testament. Behind the scenes, what's happening? The Greek language spread throughout the known world, creating a common language that people could speak and talk to. The Roman roads were built, creating a form and a way and a means for the world to be traveled out and places to be connected and the gospel to eventually be spread. So he made travel much easier for the eventual missionaries. Think about this. There was no crucifixion until almost 100 years or so before Jesus arrived. Crucifixion was not even a form of death at that point. And the Romans come in, but years before, Jesus had been prophesied about, and God said that he was going to, and described crucifixion in Psalm 22, Isaiah 53, all those different things. God has described crucifixion, a form of punishment that even wasn't around yet. Think about that. So behind all the scenes, even though the Jewish people aren't seeing all of it, God is preparing in the silence. God is having this preparation of the silence. Think about that. If there was no common language, we probably would have never heard about Jesus. If the Roman road system had not been built, we probably would have never heard about Jesus. If the crucifixion had never occurred, he would not have fulfilled so many of the prophecies for him on what he was coming to do and how he was supposed to die. It wouldn't have happened. Think about that. Those three things right there should blow your mind. And yet, it seemed like God was silent. It's been said God is never late. He's seldom early. He is always on time. Apostle Paul drove this point home to the Christians in Rome when he wrote, "You see, at just the right time, when we were still powerless, Christ died for the ungodly." When did Christ die for the ungodly? At just the right time. Not late, not early. The best we can do in our times of silence is to trust that at just the right time, God is going to work. God will act. We can trust that God may be preparing us or possibly preparing someone else. Did you hear that? We can trust that God is preparing us or possibly preparing someone else or something else to make his move and his name known and the move more effective.
That's right.
So during the 400 years of silence, God's people would cling to the words of the Torah, of the Old Testament, of the first 5 books of the Bible. They would cling to it. They would cling to the words of the Psalms. They would trust that it was happening, and they would anticipate, and they would hope that something was going to move and something was going to change. And in that silence, maybe they reminded themselves of what the prophet Isaiah taught about the mystery of God's ways. "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." I don't know about you, but we've often experienced times of silence in our lives. We often feel those times where we're wondering what God is up to. Could it be that he's preparing to do something beyond what we even thought possible? Could it be that even in the moments when we feel like, well, God, okay, are you going to do anything here in our family? Are you going to do anything here in our church? Are you going to do anything here in our community? That this time, all of this time, he's preparing and helping us and defining us and growing us. Instead of seeing times of silence as times of abandonment, we can trust that God may be preparing for something greater. maybe you're experiencing a time of silence even now. And you feel like, God, where are you? What are you doing up there? What is happening? And you wonder, and you wonder, and you sit and you go, God, what's going on? Maybe, just maybe, he's preparing you and me. And preparing others. So, in silence, there's preparation. The preparation of silence. Second, the faith of silence. Silence takes faith. Well, somebody said that it was Tom Petty who wrote, "The waiting is the hardest part." Or have you ever heard the phrase, "Hurry up and wait"? Oh, that drives me nuts. This common theme for military people, I've been told, and hurry up! Everybody, hurry up, get ready. It's like going to the airport, right? Hurry up. You got to get there an hour and a half, 2 hours before your flight. You better not be late. Hurry up. Now you got to wait. Next, right? That sense of hurry up and wait, and that the waiting is so hard, and the waiting is difficult, but there's faith in the waiting. While we may not be saints, we understand that waiting is tough, and waiting on God challenges our faith and stretches our faith. This period in the scriptures, this period of silence teaches us an important lesson about faith. Faith isn't just believing when everything is clear. Faith isn't just believing when everything's been made known. And when God feels close. Genuine faith is trusting even when God seems silent. That's one of the beautiful things about the Israelite people and the Jewish people of this day. They were trusting even in the 400 years of silence. They were moving and looking for and watching for the Messiah. Faith, trusting that the Messiah would come and that the nation of Israel would be redeemed and be restored. The writer of Hebrew describes it this way. Now, faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. That's what the ancients were commended for. And then you have that whole hall of faith in Hebrews chapter 11. And so many of these people were hoping and waiting and wanting and trusting and even having received great promises that they never got to completely see to the end. The less we hear, the less we see, the more we need our faith. The heroes listed in Hebrews 11, again, were commended because they had faith even though everything wasn't right in their lives. The end of Hebrews 11 says this: "These were all commended for their faith, yet none of them received what had been promised." I'm not talking about waiting for your kids to clean up their room and having faith that it will get done. Because sometimes there's a lot of times we go, yeah, that's not going to get done without a little encouragement, right? I'm not talking about waiting like that. I'm talking about the faith and the trusting, even when we don't see it. That God is preparing, God is working behind the scenes, God has made a promise, God has done something for us, God continues to love us, God continues to transform us, God continues to move, God continues to do things. That silence that seems so much louder than any words is the opportunity for us to completely trust and to completely say, okay, God, I don't know what's up. I know when Tammy and I were trying to figure out, we lived in Springfield, Missouri, and I think I've told you this story, but I know I know there was a period of 8 or 9 months we didn't know what was next in our lives. And that waiting and that faith and that trust, and then the moving to Boise, going, hey, this is where we think God is calling us, and where God is pointing us to. There was this long time, and we moved on faith, having no promise of any success or any jobs or anything like that. We just said, well, it's time to go. And all of those steps, crazy and hard. And sometimes it felt like God was silent. Like, okay, God, where are we supposed to go? What are we supposed to do? It was not easy. And by the way, if we had not gone to Boise, the likelihood of God bringing us here would have been much less likely. So, even in all of that times, there were still plenty. When we face silence in our spiritual journey, it can be a time of testing and growing our faith. Are we willing to trust God even when we don't get an immediate answer? Maybe you need to reflect on a time when you felt God was silent. How did you choose to respond? In faith? Third, the impact of silence. The impact of waiting for something is keenly evident starting today, especially starting today. It's December 1st. The countdown to Christmas has begun. The final stretch to Christmas is occurring. For Shalise, it often begins October 29th, the day after her birthday, because then what is next is Christmas. So sometimes it's October 29th, and she started counting down for the October 28th, the next year, right?
Not like a little bit before Thanksgiving.
Yes, but I know you. So, but we see it especially, and then what happens Christmas Eve? All these kids have been waiting and waiting and waiting, and you see it so beautifully in little kids. And then December 24th, they can't wait for Christmas morning. They can't wait to get up because Santa's coming. They can't wait. They're so excited. Let's go. And they can't even sleep that night, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yep, that's right. So, the anticipation builds and builds and builds. The excitement builds. The excitement grows. The hope grows, making the reality even more fun and more powerful and more exciting. Could you imagine the anticipation and hope that one day, soon, one day, hopefully, one day, this Messiah was going to come? There have been times when you've been like, when I'm sure the Israelite people were like, is it ever going to happen? Is it ever going to happen? And the temptation would have been just to forget it. I'm not even going to anticipate. But the anticipation occurred quickly, helps grow what God was doing. Now, you want proof of that? Shalise. If I had a remote control that said, okay, it's December 1st, and I could go, okay, it's Christmas. Christmas wouldn't mean as much, would it? It's that anticipation that I can't wait for it. But if on December 1st, I could go, you don't know this is coming, but fast forward, whoop, Merry Christmas! It would feel like, wait, what? You know, that's what would happen, right? We don't like that time frame, but that time frame builds the anticipation, builds the excitement for us. So, and John writes, the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. See, the cross and Jesus was God's climax to his redemptive plan. A moment that changes everything. Anyone who has had a child born into their family understands this. Almost anyone. waiting in the waiting room or waiting for someone to call and let you know that everything is all right, the longer you wait, the more you're concerned, but the greater the joy that occurs. Tammy and I were we didn't get to experience that as much. Tammy goes to the doctor for Breton, and we're like, he's a big kid. He was 9'6", 9'5". So Breton was a big kid. Tammy's not that big. And so they're like, well, okay. So we go in, and we had scheduled it because, I don't remember why we originally scheduled it, just because of some health issues or because he was, and then when he was breech, and so they had to do C-section. And then with Tegan was also like 9'11" or something like that, 9'9", and so he was a big boy as well. And so because they had one and he was a bigger boy, so we didn't sit, it wasn't, and then Shalise came along, and it was the first time that Tammy had ever had labor pains. And Tammy goes to the doctor and says, hey, I'm having these pains. And they're like, okay, well, we're not going to wait. And since she'd already had 2 C-sections, there was the third. But you know what it was like for me as a dad? I mean, it was kind of weird, because they're like, here, get these scrubs on. I step in, and I'm like, how are you, Tammy? Oh, the baby's born. I mean, it was that fast for me as a dad, because they wheeled her in, and for I think it was Brett, and they had to move him somewhere else because of a power outage. It was all bizarre. And I'm walking around, and I'm like, yeah, let's go, okay. I'm preparing my mind for this long period of wait, this anticipation, and all of a sudden, I walk in, and I'm not kidding you, it was 2 or 3 minutes. Okay, you have a baby boy.
Wait, what?
Yeah, it was so fast. And all 3 of them, it was just, it was like, okay, Tammy, I'm here. Okay, you can do this. Oh, we're done. And that anticipation and that waiting, even though I'm grateful for how it turned out and grateful for all of that, the anticipation didn't build as much, even though I had waited for years and months to even have that baby. So God had started this whole process of doing the redemptive, important moment in history. The world had been waiting for a long time. In fact, the world had been waiting since it's lost its memberships into the Garden of Eden Club. And so the world had been waiting for this moment to come, for the Messiah to show up, to bring the restoration that was needed. Paul writes in Romans 8, we know that the whole creation has been groaning as the pains of childbirth right up to the present time. Not only so, but we ourselves, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, grow inwardly as we wait eagerly for one adoption, the redemption of our bodies. And he's saying something miraculous and something is going to happen. And though we are post-crucifixion and post-resurrection, we are waiting for the full restoration at his return, like he promises. And so we wait for that return. The fourth one is the push of silence. Think about this. Sometimes silence pushes us and helps us take a look and reflect on our lives to kind of give us a little extra motivation to move, to do something. So, Abraham, there's a scripture in your sheet. Look at that verse. Abraham is called by God to leave his country, to go and leave, right? Circle the word go in there. Now circle the word show. What was the order of it happening? Go, and I will show. So many of us would rather have it the other way. Show me, and I'll go. But God is saying, I'm waiting, and my silence from here on this out, I am not going to show you what's going to happen. I'm not going to show you about the land you're going to possess. I'm not going to take you to the promised land until you start going. So here's that little push in the back to get you motivated. But it's amazing to us how many times we've all done that. Hey, God, if you show me this, then I'll go and do what you want. God, show me. Do you want me to talk to this person about you? God, show us. Do you want us to leave where we're living and move? Show us where we're going to end up. And finally, it was that point where we had to say, go, and I'll show. I'll show you how you're going to make it. I'll show you the house you're going to live in. I'll show you how you're going to have jobs. I'll show you the ministry you're really going to have at Boise State. I'll show you. But until you go, you won't know, and I won't show. So sometimes that silence, we have to ask ourselves the question, is the silence from God because I'm not being obedient and going? Sometimes that silence from God is that extra push to kind of move us along. And so it's challenging us and helping us to see and to move forward and to grow, to see what He really has. And so there's 3 little dots. You see them up on the screen, in the cell phone. And in this video, Eddie was right. Those 3 little dots can drive you crazy. However, those 3 little dots let us know that an answer is coming. Right now, in your life, you may feel like you've waited and waited and waited and waited and waited. It may seem like it's been 400 years. It may feel like God is silenced on this prayer request you've been praying for years. It may feel like it won't ever happen. But in that silence, we can know that He's preparing. In that silence, we can anticipate. In that silence, we can look and say, is there a way that I need to step out and go so you can show? In that silence, I know that you are helping and you're building that anticipation and that impact and the faith, and you're building our faith and all of those things. So in that silence, we trust. And like David says in Psalm 27, I remain confident of this. I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait for the Lord. Be strong and take heart, and wait for the Lord. As we reflect on the 400 years of silence, remember that God is always at work. Remember that He's working behind the scenes. Remember that we get the opportunity to trust. That we get the opportunity to move forward. We get the opportunity to anticipate and be grateful for His perfect timing. So in this Christmas time, as we reflect on the waiting that occurs for the coming of the Messiah, we can understand, we can relate, and we can wait on the Lord. Thank you, God, for teaching us some powerful lessons